So this time I'm going to talk about content validity and content related evidence. So let's see. Everything seems to be recording. Cool. Backup mic is plugged in. Fun facts, if you don't plug in your secondary mic, it doesn't work. Okay, yeah, let's just dive right in. Cool. Alright, so content validity. So according to Haynes, 1995, for those of you who are interested, you can find these in the course notes. Content validity, excuse me. Okay, content validity is the degree to which elements of an assessment, assessment instrument are relevant and representative of the target construct for a particular assessment purpose. Note, please, that this definition of content validity is really similar to Anastasi's definition. The difference is that content validity as a definition focuses on the elements of the construct and how well they are represented on our test. Thus, content validity assumes the target construct can be broken down into these elements and that we can obtain a representative sample of these elements. Yes, and I realize for those of you who are watching these straight through, there's some redundancy. Yes, I know, but I'm doing that on purpose so that y'all can, hear the important stuff repeatedly. Okay, so when trying to measure a domain, you have to make sure that all the subdomains of that construct are represented. So this is really complementary to the ideas behind domain sampling theory and reliability. Like, for example, if you were to measure depression with all 16, when you measure depression, for example, you want to make sure all 16 clinical criteria are represented in the items, not just the ones that have really nice internal consistency. It's okay if your measure is not, super highly reliable if you have content that is got broad coverage. So it's unrealistic to expect a construct that has a broad definition to have super internally consistent measures, but it's going to have great test-retest reliability. So think about what kind of reliability you're looking at when you're trying to measure your construct. So, and this is, I'm glad I explicitly spelled this out so I didn't miss it. So high levels of content validity will often lead to lower internal consistency because of the things I just talked about. So be mindful of that. Cool. So here are the main steps for establishing evidence for content-related validity. So first, let me back up and okay. Oh yeah, okay, so here are the three main steps. So first, you want to define the content domain based on relevant standards, skills, tests, behaviors, facets, factors, etc. that represent the construct. The idea here is that our construct can be represented in terms of specific identifiable dimensions or components, some of which may be more relevant to the construct than others. Second, you want to use the defined content domain to create a blueprint or outline for our test. So the blueprint organizes the test based on the relevant components of that test content domain and describes how each of these components will be represented in a test. Now for my quizzes, I literally do this. I define the content domain. That's what all the learning goals are for each module. Then I put them all together. Now I happen to just randomly sample from each content domain, or from each module to match that outline. But if I really wanted to, I could have just randomly sampled 3 learning goals from anywhere in the 3 modules and just put them all in one bin and just pick 3. I don't do that. I have it a little more structured to kind of force it to be a little more representative. Okay, so third, you want subject matter experts to be presented with the test, or to evaluate the extent to which our test blueprint adequately captures the content domain and the extent to which our test items will adequately sample the content domain. So there's two steps here. One, to make sure that your list, your blueprint, your study guide, if you will, actually reflects what is being covered in your assessment, or what your goals are. And if your goals are knowledge of psychological testing, it's pretty good to just map them onto learning goals. However, then the next step is to try and make your test items match that domain as much as possible. It's not always possible, but at least trying to do that gets you at least part of the way there. Okay, so in terms of content-related evidence, so here are the big questions you want to make sure you ask when you're evaluating content-related evidence. Does the test adequately sample the content or behavior domain that it is designed to measure? So if items are not a good sample, the results of the test will be misleading. And this aspect is typically focused on during the test development stage. It's not generally empirically evaluated, and it's based on the judgment of subject matter experts. Excuse me. Okay. I don't know if you can hear him. The mics are kind of hit or miss, but yeah, he's right here the whole time. So that's the idea. This one's a little fuzzier. And so here's what you need to develop a test with high content related evidence. You need some good logic. You need to think about what you're trying to assess. You need some intuitive skills here and perseverance. I realize it seems a little, but when you're making your test, Archie, excuse me, he's pushing the tripod. Okay. So you also have to consider other aspects of your content, including wording and reading level. We see this all the time in math achievement, that for word problems specifically, that the context of the question and the wording and the phrasing and the examples can bias test performance. And so you have to be mindful that your content can impact test performance in unanticipated ways. So be careful with your wording, try and be as clear and explicit as you can. You'll notice that I have numbers attached to all the quizzes for points, so at least you know where the points are, because sometimes apparently wording can possibly be unclear. It's not intentionally unclear, but I recognize it happens. And you also have to consider your reading level. You're not going to want to have some super dense questions with fancy words for toddlers or 8th graders or anything. Just like you most likely don't want to dumb it down too much for college students. Know your audience, because that matters. Okay. So next, threats to content validity. So here's some other kind of big terms. Archie, for the love of all that's holy, please stop. This is the nonsense that I have to deal with. I know my life is full of suffering because the cats. But anyway, so here are two main sources of content invalidity. So first, your items may reflect domain elements that are important to, let me back. So first, if items reflecting domain elements of your construct are omitted from the test outline, there's nothing you can, like, that's going to perpetuate the rest of your assessment. So the construct is going to be underrepresented. So this, in plain English, is the failure to capture important components of a construct. For example, if a test is designed to cover chapters 1 through 10, but only chapters 1 through 8 show up on the test, that is construct underrepresentation. So second, if unnecessary items are measuring irrelevant or tangential material for your construct, that construct will be misrepresented on the test. So this occurs when a test score is, well, I just said it, but I'll say it again. So a test score is influenced by factors irrelevant to the construct. And even in this case, the test is well intended, but those problems creep up and they will negatively impact results. So including reading level, vocabulary, unmeasured secondary domains. Let's use depression as an example, because I know a lot of you guys are interested in clinical. So for example, if items measuring depression are included in the scoring process, just for whatever test, like I could have thrown them into this quiz, the score itself is going to be less valid as a measure of that target construct because you're adding in irrelevant variance. It's on a systematic, well, it's messy. So that's kind of those are the big ideas for content validity. I encourage you to crawl through the course notes more, read in the book, and I'll see you in a bit.